The West Indian Language Situation by Anisha Ramnath. What is the West Indian language situation? The Anglophone Caribbean can be thought of as a zone of linguistic contact where Creole languages emerged as a result of European-controlled plantation systems, bringing together African slaves and other ethnic groups from Asia and Europe as indentured laborers. With British English making the largest contribution to the lexicon, these languages combine the phonology, morphology, and syntax of West African and other ethnic languages, hence the moniker Creole English. Creole Englishes have been prevented from achieving structural autonomy because of their partial similarity to a version of Standard English, and the colonial heritage in the Caribbean has allowed them to continue to be represented by both their speakers and their listeners. However, Standard English, which is preferred and used in formal contexts, including school, church, companies, government, and law, was established as the region's official language by British colonialism. Students are expected to use the Standard English when participating in standardized testing, such as SEA, CSET, and CAPE, which are usual throughout the British West Indies, being the common testing tool for primary and secondary school students, respectively. Post-independence, the teaching of Standard English continues to be problematic for teachers in the West Indian classrooms, as the West Indian student is expected to become a competent user of the Standard English. This problem is further compounded by competing languages in the form of music, such as soca, chutney soca, text lingo, hip-hop culture, American English, and Jamaican Creole. Another very important problem facing students' acquisition of learning the Standard English fluently is their assumption that they speak a common language, that is English, and that they will be perceived as English speakers. This is not the case, as on entering US colleges, Caribbean immigrant students have increasingly found themselves in remedial writing or ESL classes. Consequently, teachers in the 21st century classrooms continue to be challenged by students' variety of English, which they must overcome in order to develop proficient users of the Standard English. Teachers' consideration for the classroom. Some considerations for the teacher in the Trinidadian classroom in dealing with students L1 as he or she tries to develop competent Standard English users are as follows. Socioeconomic position, as well as elements like education, ethnicity, and rural versus urban provinces have an impact on one's speech. The bidirectional variance throughout the continuum as Caribbean people participate in acts of identity reveals through their use of language both their individual identities and feelings of social and ethnic solidarity and their disparities. The teacher should teach Standard English as a foreign language or second language by following the foreign language teaching stages of presenting a model which the learner will imitate, then, after imitation, getting children in many varied situations to extend their practice and use of the patterns that have been taught. except for smaller children who may not be able to grasp Standard English as different from Trinidad Creole language at this time, teachers should always endeavor to speak to their students in Standard English. In this instance, as for younger children, the teacher should speak to the pupil in his or her native tongue until the pupil develops the ability to distinguish how English is used in real-world contexts. Avoid correcting a learner's natural speech as a teacher. Up until the child has been taught enough English patterns to replace his or her vernacular, open dialogues, disputes, and descriptions by the learner in his or her vernacular must be common classroom features. The teacher's role in the classroom in developing competent usage of the Standard English. The elements of language, including pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammar aspects, may be organized in a certain order to maximize teaching effectiveness and facilitate learning. By fostering oral practice, the teacher encourages the natural employment of English patterns being learned and makes them efficient replacements for the Creole language through reading and writing by repetition of specific patterns being learned, incorporating language instruction concepts into other subjects of the school's curriculum as frequently as possible, ensuring that each lesson is handled in a way that gives certain patterns that students are learning regular repetition, giving students the chance to practice the language patterns they are learning in context through role-playing, dramatic exercises, and readers' theater, give students the chance to practice their target language patterns frequently by putting them in controlled or guided speaking or writing context, whether they may be real or imagined. Language outside the classroom. Outside of the classroom, when discussing with classmates, playing games, interacting at the school canteen, or speaking with support staff, students will revert to Trinidad Creole. This circumstance cannot and should not be avoided because learning Standard English is not meant to stop pupils from speaking Trinidad Creole, but rather to help them understand that the Trinidad Creole is not interchangeable with Standard English. There is a place for both languages, as each language system has equal value. The global spread of English is anticipated to continue long into the 21st century. Thus, it may be some time before we can identify proficient Standard English speakers. As a result, more varied dialects of the language will emerge, further degrading what ideal English or an ideal native speaker are. Thank you for listening.